Hello, my name is Jennifer Bobbe, and I am your son or daughter's teacher for U.S. History Accel. The purpose of this video is to give you some background information about the course and to help you understand what this virtual classroom will look like this year. I'd like to start with a little bit of background information about myself. I graduated from ISU with a degree in history education. And I also have my master's in curriculum and instruction from National Louis University. I was very fortunate to get placed here at LT for my student teaching experience. And the rest, as they say, is history. I've been teaching here at LT now for over 20 years. I am a wife as well as a mother. I have two children. My son, Kyle, is a freshman at the University of Iowa, and my daughter Jacqueline is a junior. So I do have something in common with you. I have a student in high school junior year, the important junior year, and she's actually attending Neuqua Valley High School. Same school colors, pretty cool. Regarding U.S. History Accel, this is a hands-on history experience. This is where we are teaching students how to think using critical thinking skills. So for our purposes in Accel, we have three skills that we're focusing on. We're looking at how to identify and explain cause and effect relationships. We're looking at students being able to identify and explain the significance of particular movements in history, as well as the impact of particular individuals. We then move into the skill of analysis. And we're going to use this quite a bit when we look at primary sources. They're going to be taking their background content and applying it in some way. So for example, with a primary source, they might be analyzing it for perspective, looking potentially for bias, and then ultimately drawing some conclusions about that source, why it's significant and what it teaches us. So that leads into the larger skill of evaluate. This is where students are going to take the facts of history, and it's not about memorizing, it's about critical thinking. So they're going to take those facts, they're going to synthesize information, and they're going to draw their own conclusions. Our curriculum takes the thematic approach, and as you can see, we have three themes that we tackle per semester, starting with a unit on democracy, and then moving into a unit on federalism, where we look at federal power versus state power. And then we finish the semester looking at a unit focusing on the theme of the economy. So of course, that's where we will get into the boom to bust cycle, looking at the Great Depression. Semester number 2 begins with a unit on foreign policy. So this is where we will get into how the United States has utilized diplomacy and how the US has gone to war. Unit 5 focuses on civil liberties and public safety. So how do we balance the rights of individuals with the common good? And then we finish the year with a lesson, or a unit rather, on equality and the American dream. And there are some really great benefits of using a thematic approach. It's really going to allow us to go into greater detail as we look at the content. It's going to allow students to be exposed to multiple perspectives as we study historical events. And I really believe it's going to help enhance student engagement, because that will allow us to get into, more modern historical topics or more modern history early on in the school year, instead of having to wait until May to get into those types of events. So we're basically looping through historical eras 6 times with these 6 units. And to give you some additional insight on that, let's take a look at what is happening in the first unit. So as I mentioned, this is a unit on democracy, and it has these open-ended questions, which allows students to, again, synthesize what they have learned from the unit and draw their own conclusions. They'll be making a claim, and they'll have to support it with the most relevant evidence. So in this particular unit, we're focusing on these 4 major historical time periods. We're going back to colonial America and the Revolution to understand how democracy will take root. We're looking at how democracy will be impacted by Western expansion. We will look at how democracy will be protected through some of the various reform movements that take place. We're going to be looking at how democracy was tested during the Civil War. And then we'll finish taking a look at some modern expressions of democracy from the 20th century. So what does a typical classroom experience look like on that 75-minute Zoom experience? So I will begin with sharing the learning target for the lesson. So this is the objective. By the end of the lesson, this is what students should know and be able to do. And that might occupy maybe about 30 minutes of a particular lesson, and it might even include students watching a YouTube video. With some lessons, students might be involved in doing some independent work, or perhaps we might have students go into breakout rooms where they can work collaboratively on a particular learning task. And some lessons might have a combination of those things happening. After a student is working independently or with their classmates in a breakout room, we will always come back together as a class, debrief, talk about what they learned, try to see the big picture, draw some conclusions, and then that will also serve as an opportunity for me to assess whether or not students have met the learning target for that particular lesson. I'll close the lesson. Again, I'll kind of review with students what learning tasks they might need to do at home to continue to practice the content and the skills. LT has implemented some new grading practices for this school year, and I just want to mention that homework and these learning tasks will be done for practice. And that means that even though these scores get entered into Infinite Campus, they do not get calculated into the student's grade. They're there for the student as well as you to see how the student is progressing within that unit. So these formative assessments, as they are called, will be labeled with an F afterwards so that you know that this was something done for practice. Summative assessments do count for a grade, and this year students do have the opportunity to do a retake of a summative test or revise a paper that serves as a summative assessment. And in order for that to happen, students will have to have completed all of the formative assessments and potentially do some additional work to show that they are ready to take an assessment again. To help your students stay organized, there is on my Canvas page a weekly schedule that does provide the learning target for the lesson, as well as the learning tasks that students need to complete. And getting back to practice, yes, students do get a score, but even more important than that score, which again doesn't get calculated into the grade, it's the feedback. So when they post an assignment to Canvas, I have the ability to share comments with them so that they know how to improve their learning. So please, please encourage them to always review over the feedback. It can be a little challenging this year to get connected and build rapport with students. So I would really, really appreciate it if you could encourage your son or daughter to have their camera turned on during our Zoom session. Also on Mondays, I take advantage of the Lion Day by doing an activity that I call going into the lion's den. And this is a time where we will have some type of icebreaker activity. It's a way for us to connect and to learn more about one another. If you need to connect with me, please email me at jbobbe@lths.net. So lastly, I just want to say that we are LT. We are all in this together, and I hope that this school year will roar with success. Thank you, and have a great day.